One of the hardest things to do as a leader is making sure your team moves in one direction. When a team member goes another way or breaks the rules, it's the leader's job to get them back on track. But how do you call them out on their mistake? Under the labor code, you do this by issuing a notice to explain or NPE. It's the first step to give them due process or giving them a chance to explain themselves before you impose a penalty. But not a lot of people know how to do this. Take our website reader who asks,
Well, attorney, one of my employees is habitually late. He did it again for the third time this week. I will have to penalize him, and I know that I have to send him an NTE or a notice to explain. Do you have any tips for drafting that? If you want to learn how to keep your team accountable the legal way, stick around as we will share 3 tips for you. Stay tuned.
this video is brought to you by How to Draft a Notice to Explain, an online workshop that teaches owners, managers, and supervisors how to draft an NPE for any kind of work violation. Set your boundaries by calling out violations. Go to info.legalguide.ph/NPE to learn more. Welcome to Legal Guide Philippines, where we simplify the law to help you make better choices. And in this video, we will be talking about 3 tips when it comes to drafting a notice to explain. Now, the first tip, Attorney Ramon, is I want to clarify when do you need an NPE?
Okay.
So you need an NPE when there is a penalty involved.
Okay. So you don't just keep issuing NTEs to whatever perceived violation.
No.
There has that violation has to have a penalty
Yes.
attached to it.
Now,
Okay.
when we say penalty, let me clarify. A
Mhm.
penalty is a negative consequence or effect to your employee. So that can take a broad range of outcomes, such as very light would be a written reprimand.
Okay.
Well, they receive a memo, or can be a little bit stronger, suspension.
Wow. Strong
Can be demotion,
emotion. Wow.
pretty strong,
Yeah. Pretty strong.
or can be termination,
That's the strongest.
strongest. So whenever any of these are present, there has to be a
Notice to explain.
notice to explain.
Right.
Why? What's the logic behind that? Because you have to give them due process or an opportunity to explain themselves. That way, when you apply the penalty, they had all of the chances to clarify their position. And it's required by the labor code.
And actually, that makes sense.
Mhm.
The due process. We live in a country which believes in due process, and it's everywhere in our laws. Even in obviously in criminal law, we can't just charge somebody with something
Or throw them in jail
yeah.
without even asking about the details.
Right. They're always given, even if these are the worst criminals in the world, assuming it's true that they are the worst criminals in the world, then they still are given the chance to defend themselves,
Mhm.
right? And this is the same with the employees as well,
Mhm.
right?
That's true. And I wanted to point out one thing when it comes to NPEs. There is a specific form that it has to take under the law.
Specific form.
Yes,
What's the form, attorney? Revino?
written.
Written. So handwritten or
It can be
typewritten
handwritten
with a
if you want,
typewriter?
but it has to be written. What's the logic behind this? What the law did was to standardize the way that people applied due process.
Okay.
Because if you don't standardize, one person may think that, oh, this is a fair way of doing it. Another may think that this is a fair way of doing it.
Yeah.
And it will lead to chaos. So what the labor code did was for work settings, this is the way we do it. It's a written document asking the person to explain why they shouldn't be given a penalty. And these are the accusations, as well as the possible consequences if they don't get to prove that they're innocent.
Cool.
Now, I want to move on to tip number 2, which is the charge in the notice to explain has to be clear and specific. Now, what's the reasoning behind this? The whole logic for doing all of this is to give the employee due notice, correct?
Right.
The opportunity to defend themselves or to explain themselves. Now, if you are unclear as to the allegation, it's as if you didn't give a notice in the first place. Let me demonstrate. Attorney Ramon, you're the employee.
All right.
and I am accusing you of something. Mr. Employee,
Yes, sir.
please explain why you should not be given a penalty for the wrong thing that you did in the past.
What did I do?
How do you answer that?
Absolutely. Like when I was grade one or yeah.
Exactly.
Mm.
If you are too ambiguous about the allegations, it's as if there was no notice given,
Right.
because it wasn't specified. So you might be thinking, Attorney Irwin, when you say specify or be clear, how does that look like in real life?
Mm.
Well, I would include specific details such as
Okay.
who was involved,
Okay.
where did this happen,
Okay.
what happened, when,
When. Mhm. Very
and
important.
why, in case
Why?
you know what transpired for this to end up this way.
So isn't that the just the five W's, attorney?
It is exactly, and that's what we teach when we teach how to create incident reports in our more comprehensive book, which is the Complete Employee Discipline System. It's actually the same thing, and one of the things that we recommend in that system is whatever findings you have in the early stages of the investigation, that's the data that you pull in to the notice to explain, so that when you serve the notice to explain, it is clear and specific.
That's pretty cool.
Now, again, what are the consequences if it's not clear and specific? It's as if you did not even submit a notice to explain. Just like what I did with you. You did something bad in the past.
But it's not
Explain
clear.
yourself.
Not clear. So it's as if I have no notice.
Yes.
Makes sense.
Now, I want to move on to tip number 3, which is the maximum consequence should be stated on the NPE.
What does that mean, attorney?
Okay, so you have to be able to apprise or notify the employee that these are the things that can happen if you don't take this seriously or you don't give us a rational justification or explanation.
Mm.
So, more often than not, it takes the form of spelling out the types of outcomes that are possible. You can be suspended or terminated if found guilty of the accusations.
So you have to put in the maximum possible
Yes.
effect.
What's the logic behind this? If you just say, oh, you can be verbally reprimanded or you might be issued a reprimand for this, and then finally, when the decision comes, you find that it's termination.
Hmm.
That's unfair because the employee was not notified or apprised of the full range of consequences.
So in that case, the employee is not aware of the gravity of what they're being charged of.
So it's a faulty notice.
Okay. So
Now, it also works both ways. So supposing you say you may be given a reprimand or suspended, so it's up to this level.
Mhm.
Okay, let's imagine. However, upon investigation, it turns out that the penalty was here.
Mhm.
It's just a warning. That is okay because it's in the favor of the employee. So if you go lower, no worries, but you cannot go higher than what was stated in the NPE. Please remember that. Again, if you don't state the maximum consequence and you go for that, it's as if no notice was given.
so it's the same. It's as if you're not clear and if you don't put in the maximum penalty or maximum effect, it's as if no notice was given.
Yes, because they were warned that
Yeah.
this could happen. So let's do a recap, guys.
Okay, sure. Let me do the recap for you. Let's see if I remember. When do we issue an NTE? And we issue this when there is a penalty involved.
Yes.
Okay, so don't just willy nilly send out NTE for whatever imagined slight that you experience.
You
Okay.
save it for when a penalty is involved.
Yes. Okay. So that's the first tip. Second is in your NTE or in your notice to explain, your charge has to be very clear and specific.
Mhm.
Otherwise, if it's not clear or specific, you run the risk of it being nullified or
Invalidated.
invalidated as if it wasn't issued. Okay, and that would be important in the next steps, right, Attorney
Mhm.
Irwin? Okay, and lastly, last tip is that in your NTE, you should state the maximum consequence or penalty. Again, if you don't do that, it may be invalidated later
Mhm.
on. Okay, did I get it correctly, Attorney?
You did. Now, if you want to learn more about drafting NTEs, please go to info.legalguy.ph/NTE to learn more.
And if you like this video, please give us a like and subscribe. It lets us know we were able to help you. And of course, it encourages us to make more videos. If you learned something, please share it with your family and friends so it helps them as well.
One last thing, When you hold your team members accountable with NTEs, you're actually doing them a big favor. By calling them out on what behavior is acceptable, you teach them how to lead themselves. And when they learn what accountability means, you have planted the seed so they grow as leaders themselves in the future. So was it that simple?
Now go make better choices.